feel like I've done so many comparison videos lately, and this one right here is one that I've been requested of so many times, so we're gonna do it. We're gonna compare the Flair 58 to the Gaggia Classic Pro. We're gonna compare a manual espresso brewer to a semi-automatic espresso brewer that are in the same price range. Because many of you guys wanna know, should you buy a manual espresso brewer like the Flair 58 or something a little cheaper, or should you just opt for something like a semi-automatic espresso machine like the Gaggia Classic Pro? So today I want to help you in that decision and help you figure out what is best for you, how much money you should really spend in this whole getting into espresso at home, ultimately what makes better espresso too. I'm also going to pull out my Lelit Bianca at the end of this video, which is a $3,000 espresso machine, which if you're into espresso is not a surprising amount of money, but if this is something that's new to you, that's a lot of money for coffee. And so can these machines even stack up to something like that? Especially the Flair 58, because the Bianca can do something called flow profiling, and the 58 being a manual espresso brewer can emulate very similar pressure profiles to a $3,000 espresso machine. If this is the first time that we're meeting, hey, how's it going? My name is Kyle. Thanks for watching this video. Now some disclosure, Flair did send me the 58. They didn't pay me anything and they don't get to see this video before you do, but they are gonna be giving me a 58 to give away to you. And in this video, I'm gonna do that. So all you have to do is follow a link down in the description below, but don't do that quite yet, because if you watch the whole video, I'll actually have codes for you to enter to have extra entries to win this guy. So watch the whole video and then link in the description below to win this amazing machine. Let's talk about price. Like what does this cost? What is this? And what's that? This is the Flair 58. And this is a really intriguing manual espresso brewer for a few reasons, and I want to explain them to you. The first reason being is this is a 58mm portafilter machine. What that means is it uses a full commercial size portafilter. Most machines in a cafe would have a 58mm commercial size. It's kind of the standard language for espresso. And what that means for a machine like this is any accessories or any portafilters or anything that you would have for a regular espresso machine can also work for this, which is pretty exciting. It also has electronics to preheat the brew cylinder, which is actually a big deal because normally manual espresso brewers like this one right here have no electronics. This is something meant to, unfold and throw in a bag, and you can take this camping or you can have espresso on the go. In fact, I've compared these two. Go watch that, link in the description below. Whereas the 58, it's not meant to do that. It's meant to sit in your kitchen or on your coffee bar. It can travel, it can do all those things, it can fold up, but it's really not meant to do that. Like, this is bolted together, you have to unscrew parts. And because it has those electronic components, I think it just speaks to what this thing is really meant to do, which is brew great espresso at home manually. It's beautiful, it looks great. I mean, if you want to know more about this machine, again, I've got some videos on the 58 that I'll link down in the description below. Be sure to check those out. Let's talk about this right here, which is the Gaggia Classic Pro. And I think it's kind of fair to say this is one of the most popular espresso machines in the world, especially for the home barista. And so if you're somebody who's just getting into this whole espresso thing and you stumbled upon this video and you're not sure how much to spend on an espresso machine, $450 can seem like a lot of money. And it is. That's a lot of money to spend on coffee if it's one of your first purchases. I totally get that. When it comes to espresso, there's really not a lot of ways to do it well for cheap. Unless you're gonna buy something secondhand, you're gonna be spending at least a few $100s between a grinder and a machine. And so for $450 for the brand new Gaggia Classic Pro, in my opinion, for what it offers is actually a pretty good deal. And so let's talk about that. It also has a 58mm commercial portafilter, and at this price point, that's actually kind of hard to find. If you had something like a Breville espresso machine, most of them use like a smaller portafilter at the lower price ranges, so they would use something like a 54mm portafilter. But this, for the money, is wonderful. If somebody's asking me like, Kyle, what espresso machine should I get first? Like, I want to get into all of this, 9 times out of 10, I'm recommending the Gaggia Classic Pro because they're so widely available. Like, there are full-on forums on modding these machines and make them even better than they are out of the box. It's pretty cool. Like, if that's something that interests you, this might be the machine for you. It also has the ability to steam milk. So if you need milk drinks, I mean, that's something that the Flair will not be able to do because this is just strictly espresso. Where this thing has a full single boiler, you can brew both espresso, steam milk. If you want some lattes, this is a great machine. One big thing to note, comparing these two, is the Gaggia will have no adjustability on the pressure that you can apply while brewing. There are mods to change this machine to be able to brew at different pressures. In fact, I'll link some of those videos down below if you want to check them out from other creators. This has more flexibility in the espresso that it can create because you can adjust the pressure while you're brewing. I know that might seem confusing, but basically the pressure that you're applying to your espresso can drastically change the flavor in your cup, along with things like temperature. And that's where this also is a little iffy out of the box. It doesn't have a built-in PID. I mean, neither does this, but you might be able to use your kettle, which might have a PID, and you'll be more accurate with temperatures of water. Where the Gaggia, I mean, out of the box, it's not gonna be quite as consistent in its temperature as other machines. But the big question is, which one should you buy? Well, before we get into which one you should buy, let's talk about how it brews espresso. And real quick, I'll walk through its workflow for each machine. The Flair 58 is pretty wonderful for a manual brewer. It's got this electronic controller, and with just a couple clicks of the button, this thing can heat up in just a few minutes. And like, it's piping hot. I can't keep my fingers on that. Coated in rubber, so it shouldn't be too much of a hazard, but this thing does get really hot. It does have adjustability in how hot you can get. I always brew it at its highest temperature. I just love light roasted coffee. And so for me, getting that temperature as high as possible helps be able to extract all those lightly roasted coffees. So once this is on, it takes a few minutes, but Flair does recommend keeping that in there for like 10 minutes or so it can get real nice and hot. You don't want to just turn this on and then brew. Neither with the Gaggia either. Like, this thing will heat up in just a couple minutes. It's pretty quick for an espresso machine, but I would highly recommend, if you're able to do this, to keep this on for at least 15 minutes before you pull a shot, with the portafilter locked in so that it can get nice and toasty. At a minimum 15 minutes, and if you're able, like a half an hour. Like, if you've been getting sour cups of coffee and just inconsistent coffee out of a machine like the Gaggia, let it heat up and see if that changes anything. It might really change the game for you. Now, the thing with the Flair, it doesn't have a boiler, so you're gonna have to heat up your kettle, which I'm gonna go do now, and then we're gonna brew some shots on both of these. Now, to keep this fair, I'm gonna use the same basket inside each portafilter, which is a VST basket. Each basket interacts with coffee a little differently and restricts flow slightly different. So to keep this consistent in the flavor that it'll produce, I'm gonna use the same basket.
A few moments later.
Okay, so we ground our coffee here, and what's really great about the Flair 58 is that it uses, again, a 58mm portafilter. I know I've said that before, but I am really excited about this, and that's because they just have so many accessories for 58mm portafilters. I have a lot of E61 portafilters as well, and those actually work with the Flair 58, which is great. So if you have an E61 machine, you want a secondary manual brewer, all of your portafilters will work with the Flair 58. Now, I'm boiling my water at 205 degrees, which is on that high end for espresso, but by the time it hits that brew cylinder and hits the coffee, it's definitely cooled down a few degrees. And so I like to fill this right to the top. And so again, you're gonna need a kettle separate than this machine. Thing to note with the Flair 58, obviously this is gonna be a little bit more workflow than this. You gotta fill that water up, you've gotta empty the brew chamber once you're done, which I'll show you in a second. It's not a lot by any means, but if you are always in a rush and you really just wanna make a quick espresso often, something to note with the Flair 58. And here's where the 58 can be a little cumbersome. You want to, once you're done filling your shot, to get another cup under that group head and push out all the excess water. This will just make it so much easier to dump out the coffee that's in the portafilter. Don't miss this step, it makes such a mess. Now, a little downside with the Gaggia, there's not a lot of clearance between that portafilter and your cup. So if you are brewing with taller cups, it's really hard to get a scale under there. You could remove the drip tray, but then I wouldn't advise doing that. With the Gaggia, push the button and you're brewing espresso. Now, to be noted, and I've completely forgot to mention this earlier, this Gaggia Classic Pro does have the OPV mod, which is simply replacing a little spring to allow it to brew at a very different pressure than it does out of the box. This just makes it brew at a 9-bar pressure, similar to what I'm pulling on the Flair 58 and my Bianca. Out of the box, this brews at a much higher pressure. If you do have a Gaggia and that's not something you're aware about, I will link a video down in the description below for that as well. Very good. A great machine. You know, brews a really great espresso. Okay, I've tried both of these, and this is my thoughts on which one tastes better. They both taste very similar. I mean, this one has more flexibility in the espresso it can brew. You can pressure profile your shots, which can really help change the flavor of a cup in many ways. But the Gaggia makes a wonderful cup of espresso, especially when you've applied some mods that really don't cost that much money and are really not hard to do. I will say, out of the box stock, the Gaggia Classic, it's gonna be tougher to get to that really good shot of espresso. I think though, if you're watching this video and you do have the Gaggia, I've got to suggest the OPV mod. It's literally a spring. So which one should you buy? Well, in a second, I'm going to bring the Bianca out and compare it to the Flair 58, but this really depends on what you're looking for. I mean, do you want an easy espresso machine? Are you just getting into espresso? And do you need steaming capabilities? If you need steam, then this is the option for you. It's not the most convenient machine to use for steam. At $450, like, it's kind of hard to beat for getting into espresso. And at a 58mm portafilter, I think this is the option most people should consider when getting into espresso at home. But let's talk about the Flair 58. If you're somebody who really nitpicks the details, and you know you're the kind of person, if you buy something like the Gaggia, you're gonna want to upgrade in a few months. If you don't need milk beverages, the 58 provides a lot of value. A manual espresso brewer like this with the electronic controller just makes such an ease of workflow. The ability to use 58mm accessories is huge in my opinion. I think that's game changing, and I think that's what really separates the Flair 58 from any other manual espresso brewer on the market right now. Let's talk about build quality. Flair 58 has very few plastic pieces. It is all metal. The group head is a thick piece of stainless steel. You know, it's got wooden handles and knobs, and it's a matte black finish. At this point in time, that's the only color that they have. It's got a pressure gauge. As I've covered in other videos, the electronics on the Flair 58 don't feel incredibly premium. I'm nitpicking. That's kind of why I do these videos. With the Gaggia, on the other hand, its build quality is hit and miss. I think the body and chassis of the Gaggia are heavy duty. This is pressed stainless steel. I think this thing is just built to last. But that being said, there are plastic pieces on here that really just make it feel a little bit cheaper than it needs to be. Things like its steam wand are very, you know, glossy black plastic, and the same with its portafilter. Now they've come out with some recent new colors for this machine, and you can get it in a variety of them. And I can link those down below if you're interested in checking this machine out. But I think overall it's good. It's got some really good build quality, especially for the price point. The drip tray is plastic, and even up here you have some plastic pieces. So you've got a mixture of metals and plastics, but overall I think the quality is pretty good. So really this comes down to what you would prefer. Do you need a semi-automatic espresso machine? Would you prefer to steam your milk? Or would a manual espresso machine be good for you? It is pricey at the Flair 58, but Flair is actually working on an option without electronics for the 58 that hopefully will be announced soon. Not sure if that's information I'm allowed to share, but there it is. But I know the question you're really wanting to know is, how does the Flair 58 compare to machines like the Bianca or a dual boiler espresso machine or a prosumer, like those expensive espresso machines that you're spending thousands of dollars on? Can you save some money and get something like the Flair? Well, the quick and easy answer is definitely 100%. Yes, you totally can. But the thing is, there's a couple things you need to know about that. First off, the Bianca is going to be able to pull back-to-back shots much easier than the Flair 58. Even with the easy workflow of the 58, being able to pull consecutive shots on a manual espresso brewer is never a convenient thing to do. The Flair 58 is completely possible of hosting a group of people to make shots for a bunch of people, but then again, you need that steaming power because I would say most people want a milk beverage. And that's where something like the Bianca just becomes so convenient. Like, those are things that you get with spending a lot more money. So do you need to spend that much money? No. So here's the deal. If you're watching this video and you want to know where to spend most money for coffee, save some money on an espresso machine. If you want to get something like the Flair 58, get the Flair 58. It's wonderful. Enter this giveaway. Maybe you'll win it. The Gaggia Classic Pro, another amazing machine. But really, the thing that'll change your coffee and make it taste so much better is less about the machine. It's more about the coffee grinder. Now, maybe you've heard this before, maybe this is news to you, but the coffee grinder will completely change the flavor in your cup. Investing in a good grinder is important. And that's still the same on the 58. If you get the 58 and you don't have a good grinder that's designed for espresso, it's going to limit you on the ability of espresso that you can create. That's just the bottom line. So if you want to spend money on a product, before you buy an espresso machine, invest in a grinder. So before you go, let me know, is this something that you're interested in? Which machine would you choose out of these three? Would you choose the Flair 58, the Gaggia Classic Pro, a prosumer machine like the Lelit Bianca? Let me know in the comments down below, and maybe we can have a great conversation down there. That's where I'll be hanging out. Now, I've got one more video in this Flair 58 series, and that's gonna be comparing this to another 58mm manual espresso machine, the 𝘿𝙤𝙀 robot. And so if you want to see that, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it when it drops. And like this video to let me know that you enjoy these videos. Be sure to enter that giveaway down below. And if you want to support this channel, be sure to check out my Patreon down below. I just started a Discord and we've got an awesome community talking about all things coffee, posting pictures of brew bars, and just sharing recipes and experiences of what we're brewing daily. So if you want to check that out, become a Patreon down below, support the channel, and join that community. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Continue to brew great coffee, continue to brew at home. Peace. We'll see you guys in the next video.